What's good, everybody? This is Brian Mazik, aka Franchise Play, and I'm pleased to be back with you with another episode of Mazik Speaks. And of course, obviously, we mixed that in. We got Ask FP. You heard me crack my knuckles. I was supposed to sound a little bit tougher than that, but it didn't. Don't worry about it. All right, so we're gonna jump right into Ask FP. We got a lot to talk about. If you can see the title of the video, it's Kevin Durant's injury. Oh my God. GSP versus Bisping. There's some other stuff going on in the world of sports and video games and all that other stuff I like to talk about. But let's jump into the questions from Ask FP as soon as we get them on here. Let's see. Makeup. All right, let's see here. All right, our first question today comes from Jared Young. And Jared Young is very much a Clipper fan. He tells me that right here. Again, I'm a Clipper fan, and I want Doc fired. I did my best Vince McMahon voice. You're fired. So I've been saying that for months. That's what Jared said. And he said, what do you think? I don't think that's the answer, honestly. I mean, the Clippers are among the top teams in the West. They've dealt with all kinds of injuries. So obviously you can't hold that against Doc. Their best player is aging. You know, he's got a game that can stave off Father Time for a little bit longer than some other point guards. I'm talking about Chris Paul here. But I don't point to anything and say Doc's messing this up. They desperately need an impact player at small forward, and they have not been able to get that. The Clippers look like one of those teams, man, like the 2000-2001 Sacramento Kings that have really good players at just about every position, but for whatever reason, they just not good enough. And I don't know if that's a coaching issue. You know, sometimes the collection of talent just doesn't quite jibe the way you want it to. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's really what we're looking at with the Clippers right now. I don't think it's anything you got to like go fire Doc about, you know? That's just my opinion. All right, next up we got Victor Daniel Torres, and he says, should the 76ers have kept Nerlens Noel or traded Jahlil Okafor? I think they probably should have traded them both. But, well, in retrospect, no. Now, obviously, because Embiid's hurt again, and now you got to have a big because Embiid is looking like he's going to be one of those guys that is chronically injured. And I hate to say that, and I'll pray that that's not the case. But from a business standpoint, the 76ers will have to move as if that could be the case. So what now looked like you had a log jam at the center position with Noel, Okafor, and Embiid now looks like now you might have traded away your backup big or your starting big and let Nerlens Noel and Okafor kind of just go at it. So now what we know about what's going on with Embiid, I'm not going to say they should have kept Noel because I think he would have left anyway. Because I think he's just become disenchanted with the Sixers and not getting the playing time he wanted and so on and so forth. But I definitely think Okafor needs to play a little bit more minutes than he's playing. I mean, I was looking just the other night. He played 28 minutes, 29 minutes. He had 28 points and 10 rebounds in that time period. And you know, that was, they were only playing the Knicks, but it's still top level production. And it isn't as if he didn't prove himself last year when he averaged 17 points a game. So I really wish the Bulls had traded for Okafor. I don't know what held that rumored deal up, but I almost don't want to know because I'm sure it'll be something that I'll be like, oh, my God, why didn't they just trade for him or whatever? Why didn't they just give it up? All right, our next question also comes from Victor Daniel Torres. He says, in your opinion, will D. Wade return to the Bulls next season? I think that the odds are that he will. And the reason why I say that is not because, oh, my God, he loves the Bulls organization all of a sudden so much or anything like that. I think that he mentioned, and he was on Adrian Wojnarowski's podcast, and he said there were three factors. It was money, it's winning, and family. Well, according to what he was saying, and this makes perfect sense, two of those three things would lead him back to Chicago. He's really loved the way his kids have flourished in Chicago. Both of his sons go to Mount Carmel. They're playing on the basketball team. They're doing well. It's a cool thing. And then obviously Wade still has family in this area. So now his boys are able to be in contact with other members of the family that they probably weren't able to be in contact with before. That's the first thing. Second thing, the Bulls, the amount of money that Wade is going to make next year, I believe if he picks up his player option, it's like $28 million, somewhere in that range. If he leaves that money on the table and becomes a free agent again, he's not going to get that kind of money again. Okay, from another company, from another team. So those two things, which are very big factors, are in favor of him coming back to the Chicago Bulls. I'm not sure I want that as much as I like D Wade. Not sure I want that for the best for the franchise's best interest, but it is what it is. Now, as far as winning, yeah, absolutely. He could lock on with another team someplace, go to the Clippers or go to Cleveland or go to a place like that and have a better chance to win right now. Sure, he could. But, you know, those two other factors are very important. Next up is Simon Torvey Sunland, and he says, do you agree or disagree with people stating that the NBA is a soft league? I mean, I think it depends, man. I mean, I think there's some rule changes definitely that have taken place that have made the game much less physical, which is why you see so many high scores and not as good defense across the board. I think that for sure. But a soft, I mean, if that's your definition of soft, then yeah, I guess we'd have to agree. All right, our next question comes from B Celtics 34, which is the Lur King, my dog. What's going on, man? He says, do you think the Celtics with Bogut could take the Cavs to 7 games? No, not if the Cavs have a healthy Kevin Love and a healthy J.R. Smith. But now we already know Bogut is pretty much committed to playing for the Cavs. So that's kind of going to be a moot point. But just hypothetically speaking, I still don't think that Bogut moves the needle that much to push the Cavs to 7. I mean, I don't think the Cavs are going to just blow through Boston, but I think they should beat Boston in 5 or 6. So, all right. The Lur King again says, you think the Celtics should select Markelle Fultz, Lonzo Ball, or Josh Jackson? I'm a huge fan of Jackson. I don't know if over Fultz, but Ball wants to go to L.A. Yeah, I don't know if Ball really wants to go to L.A. His dad saying whatever his dad is saying this, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that after we get to the Ask FP segment. But we don't know where this kid wants to really play. You know, he hasn't said anything. You know, obviously he's from California. I'm sure he wouldn't mind playing for the Lakers or the Clippers or whatever. But we don't know, like, if that's a real major priority for him. That's his dad trying to kind of guide his career, you know. I like all three of those guys. I really kind of feel like, barring some sort of injury, I don't think you could go wrong with any of the three. Ball is my favorite. Ball is the guy I feel is the best player in the draft. I think he is special. I also think Fultz is special as a scorer. I don't know if he's special in every other situation. He's a very good defender. He blocks a lot of shots for a guard. I mean, a lot of shots. And Josh Jackson's just a do-it-all kind of guy, but I don't know if he's a leader yet. He could just be a big talent, which is a big deal when we're talking about taking the number one pick, which is what the Celtics could have with that Brooklyn pick. So for me, I would take Lonzo Ball, but you also got to look at how that mixes with the team you already have. Well, Isaiah Thomas is a ball-dominant point guard. So in my opinion, they would be better off getting guys who can play off the ball. Now, it would be nice to have another guy who can go off the dribble and be a threat to score and who could create his own shot. And you're going to have to depend on Isaiah Thomas to create everyone's shot. In that sense, it's Markelle Fultz because he's the best at that of those three guys. So, and I would honestly say Ball is probably the least, he fits the least of all of the players that if you're talking about matching them with the Celtics' current core. All right, next up is also the Lur King. He says, do you think Fultz goes number 1 in the draft even though no March Madness? And sorry for so many questions. Nah, it's not too many questions. It is a little bit similar to the last one. I think he could go number one. Depends on who gets the pick. I do think not having March Madness will hurt him some because we all know how draft stock changes once the tournament starts. The guys who are still playing get an opportunity to get more exposure. They get more momentum behind their name. Markelle Fultz is not going to have that benefit because his team is not very good. The Washington Huskies are really bad. So that's that. Next question also comes from the Lurk King. Do you think that Pittsburgh overpaid for Antonio Brown? It's a heck of a lot of money for one player that's not a quarterback. That's an accurate assessment, Lurk King, but Antonio Brown is one special receiver. He changes a lot about the way defenses have to cover the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he is one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL's favorite target, and that shouldn't be undersold either. So the whole argument about basically it's like this. If there's any two receivers in the NFL who deserve the amount of money Antonio Brown got, it's Antonio Brown and Julio Jones. We could argue about whether or not a receiver should ever get paid that amount of money. But if there is a receiver worthy of getting that salary, it's Brown and Jones. All right. Deontay Rose says, with the leaked WrestleMania 33 matches released since January, what should we WWE I'm gonna see, what should WrestleMania 33 and what should main event? I'm sorry, WrestleMania 33 and what will be the main event? Thank you and God bless. God bless you as well, sir. Okay. I think as long as the matches that leaked are what they are, I mean, you got to have, I think, Goldberg and Brock Lesnar main event. Got to. I mean, they still, even though it's getting a little dry, in my opinion, you still got to look and say these guys are like two biggest, hottest names right now, the most commercially attractive names that you can bring out there. Obviously, aside from John Cena or somebody, whatever. But those two guys, their name, the attraction right now is pretty big. But I do think that it needs to be for a title, which is the reason why I and many other people expect for Goldberg to beat Kevin Owens at Fastlane, so that match now is not just two really big names, it's for the WWE Universal title. So I think that's got to be what the main event probably is. But I wouldn't be totally shocked if there's some sort of swerve at Fastlane, since everybody pretty much, quote unquote, believes this is what the match is going to be. Now, we're talking about leaked matches. The WWE is trying to get smarter and smarter and smarter as it pertains to keeping their storylines and things like that secret during the internet era right now, where we are, where it's very hard to keep anything secret. Don't be shocked if the WWE is leaking their own stuff, fake stuff, basically. We're talking a lot about fake news. I think the WWE would be pretty smart to start leaking fake storylines. I think that would be very smart. I wouldn't be shocked if that's what this is. Hopefully that's what this is. I'm hoping, I'm being optimistic that that's what it is. All right, next up, we got Deontay Rose again. He says, in your opinion, what are your top 5 WrestleManias of all time? In my opinion, he says it's 17, 19, 30, 10, and 8. Honorable mentions are 3, 6, and 21. Obviously, 3 is amazing. Hogan slams Andre. I would definitely put that in my top 5. My favorite one actually is not even on your list, and at 31 is my favorite. 31 was awesome to me. I thought Seth Rollins cash in at the Money in the Bank, his match with Randy Orton. I love Sting and all. It was a great show, I thought. So I'm a little surprised that you don't have that one there. WrestleMania 28 was good. The main event was great. I really loved the Rock and Cena in the main event, but the overall show was just, just kind of good. Also, the other thing about 28 had the end of the era match, which I thought was really cool with Triple H and The Undertaker. So I like that one. I would agree with you about 8 and 17 as well, being right up there. So I'd have to say, 3, 8, 17, 28, and 31 for me. All right, what do we got next? We got Weston Flores, and he says, I've always wondered as a wrestling fan, do you watch New Japan or Lucha Libre? And if so, what do you think of them? I catch New Japan a little bit here and there. Lucha Libre, not as much. I have watched Lucha Underground. I really like Lucha Underground's product. I love the way they shoot their shows. I really kind of think that TNA could stand to borrow from the way they do their shows, because from a grand scale, they're never going to be able to compete with the WWE. But Lucha Underground seems to kind of understand that, and they embrace it with the way they do it, with this kind of just raw, organic kind of look that they accentuate with their presentation. So I like, of this level of promotion, that's the one I think I like the most of everyone. I mean, Ring of Honor is good too. All right, let's go next. Jared Young says, when did you start watching WWE, and when was your favorite era? For me, I started watching in 05, 06, which is still my favorite era. Man, I tell you, when I started watching wrestling, you'll really realize how old I am. I started watching wrestling in the early 80s. Started watching wrestling in the early 80s. Like Andre the Giant, Hillbilly Jim, Hulk Hogan. I was a very, very little, very young child, but I watched it like, man, I had the action figures there. None of their body parts moved. They were just stuck in a pose. They were just these big rubber guys. They were terrible action figures, but it was WWE, and we loved everything that had anything to do with WWE. Then I remember the AWA started making action figures, and all of their toys were better. The ring was better. The action figures were better because you could move them. It was just better. WCW didn't get WCW. Well, actually, it was NWA first, the National Wrestling Alliance. I'm telling you, I'm going back. I think that was the mid to late 80s was my favorite era. Now, part of that is because I was a kid, and you can appreciate wrestling probably best when you're young. I also liked it because I thought that the guys were more talented on the mic. They were definitely not more talented in the ring. I mean, we talking about the matches back then, man, it was punches and body slams, a couple suplexes, some elbows and knee drops, maybe a submission hold here and there. But you know, the in-ring work was nowhere near as elaborate as it is now. So, I mean, the mixture of the best of both worlds would be today's in-ring work and the mic work and drama and showmanship of 25, 30 years ago. Though that would be the best. So if I had to choose, though, which one I would rather have, I'd rather have the late 80s, because late 80s, early 90s, because those guys made you watch for the story. And to be quite honest, the story is what sets wrestling apart from anything else that's somewhat athletic. Because yes, these guys are great athletes, and guys and girls are great athletes. They do all types of stuff, but I can see great athletes anywhere. I can go watch basketball, I can watch football, I can watch MMA, I can watch boxing, I can watch baseball. Well, maybe not baseball as much, in terms of not as many baseball players are as great athletes, but you know what I'm saying? I can watch sports and see great athletes, but the drama and the showmanship is what brings wrestling to a whole different category of its own. And I thought that was best in the late 80s, early 90s. Next question comes from Jared Young, and he says, which NBA teams do you think have a legit chance of winning the championship this season? A legit, realistic chance to win the championship this season, I think, is 3 teams. I think it's Cleveland. I think it's Golden State, even with Durant's injury. And I think it is the San Antonio Spurs, and the Spurs are on the down of that. So I know there's a lot of teams playing good. You got Boston playing good. You got the Washington Wizards starting to play better. You got the Rockets up there, and you got, you know, but we're talking about to win a championship. Just those three. Just those three. All right, our next question also comes from Jared Young, and he says the predictions for UFC 209. Yeah, I'm actually going to do a formal. I don't know. We'll see. I was thinking about doing a formal UFC 209 prediction joint for the entire card. I generally like to do that. I do it on Forbes most of the time, so I probably still do that, even though I need to be getting on that like in the next day or two. So I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to put that on pause, Jared, and I'm going to ask you make sure that you stay tuned. I'm going to do it on Forbes and a separate video where I do my predictions. And I already know when I open myself up for these predictions, if I'm wrong about something, people are going to come in. I thought you said blah, blah, but yeah, I already know what's going to happen. But to be honest, my predictions for MMA are probably the tightest of any predictions I make on any sport. So you guys got something to look forward to on that end. I'm not saying I get them all right, but I have had more cards than I can count where I predicted 10 or 11 correct of 12 possible fights. So we'll see what happens. Next question. Oh, last question. That's what happens when you blow the screen up this big. You don't even know where you are. All right, so let's get into what I wanted to talk about, some of the other stuff that's going on that is not Ask FP type of stuff. So first thing, the biggest thing right now, I think going on in sports right now, perhaps definitely in the NBA, is Kevin Durant's injury. He has some damage done to his, I believe it was his right knee, and Durant is going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. I believe they're probably going to keep him out for the remainder of the regular season. At least. I could even see them sitting him until the end of the first round to give him 100% opportunity to get over his injury. Here's my thing. You got to think about this, and people really need to make sure they grasp this. The Golden State Warriors, without Kevin Durant, would have already been one of the number one threats to win a championship, even if Durant had not signed there. Okay, so if there's a team out there in the NBA who could afford to lose its best player, it's the Warriors, because essentially almost this entire team is the same team that won 73 games last year. Okay, I'm not saying they don't need Durant, because that's not the case. Obviously, he's on the team, they need him, but they'll be okay probably through the rest of this regular season, through the first round of the playoffs. They will probably be fine. If you think about it, as long as they can stay in the number one spot, which is not a given, certainly not a given, but as long as they could stay in the number one spot, they would end up probably playing against. I mean, not a given. Who are they? I'm getting some feedback there, but in the first round of the playoffs, you're looking at a matchup with the Denver Nuggets, a team that's 6 games under 500. And I know the Nuggets gave them a run in the regular season a little bit earlier, but come on, man. They can't beat the Denver Nuggets. Come on. I think they can beat the Denver Nuggets without Kevin Durant. And then we look, okay, so in the second round, they could get the Jazz or the Clippers. It could get a little weird there. So I would think, yeah, you probably want to make sure you got Durant for the second round. But the first round should be all right. They got a 4-game lead over the Spurs right now with 22 games left. And you still got Curry, Thompson, Draymond, Iguodala. Still a pretty good team. So I think they'll be okay. But the injury, now here's where the real concern I think will come in is after his evaluations and all of that go through, what if there's actually a risk, right, that he could re-injure himself or things could get worse? Then we start to ask, how much is he willing to risk? Because he doesn't have a long-term commitment to the Golden State Warriors. He doesn't. We know that. So is he willing to risk Clay not at 100%? That could be the case. That could be the case. So we're gonna see what happens on that end. All right. The other thing is this is another piece of injury news. Joel Embiid is out for the season. They confirmed it today. I kind of knew this was gonna happen. You got a team, a young guy who's been hurt a lot. We talked a little bit about this a second ago, and he's gotten hurt again, and they're not going to take any chances with him. He has a meniscus tear. He's not playing this regular season, and you got to really wonder, man, can this guy stay healthy? You know, it's a shame. It's terrible because he's such a talent, but can he stay healthy? And I mean, the 76ers want their fans to trust the process, and the fans were beginning to believe in that process. But when Embiid hurt, there's some doubt. I know there's some doubt with that fan base for sure. All right. We also got Georges St-Pierre's opponent has been announced for his comeback fight in the UFC, and it is going to be middleweight champion Michael Bisping. And it's for the middleweight title. So if you don't know, Georges St-Pierre is regarded by many as the greatest welterweight in UFC history, greatest welterweight in MMA history. That's where the majority of his fights have always been. That's where his dominance was. Now he's not. He's now stepping up. If you're not familiar with how the weight classes go, welterweight in UFC is 170, 185 is middleweight. So he's 15 pounds. And Georges St-Pierre is not a guy who has a lot of height. So he's going to be significantly bulkier for this fight. Can he beat Michael Bisping? I think he can. I respect Bisping as being a warrior and a guy who's been in the octagon with a lot of great fighters. But if I were to rank my level of respect for the current UFC champions, he would not rank in the top tier of those champions. That might sound mean, but it's real. It's my real opinion. So I think that GSP was given a relatively big name, but one of the most beatable of the big names that he could get. And a way for him to step right into a championship straight off the bat. And the other good thing about this, as far as from the UFC standpoint, is you would then be giving a guy of Georges St-Pierre's stature and popularity a championship. Now, whether or not he keeps the strap on him or he just is a prize fighter that goes picking fight for fight here and there, trying to fight the biggest names he can fight, I don't know if he does that or not. But I know getting Bisping is probably one of the easiest big names St-Pierre could get. Now, he could lose. Michael Bisping could knock George St-Pierre out. He could, but I don't think so. I don't think that's going to happen. We'll see. We'll see what transpires. But I can't say I'm jumping up and down for that fight. It's cool to see GSP come back, but I would have liked to potentially see him in the octagon with somebody else. Just being honest. Just being honest. All right. Let's talk a little bit about video games here. We're going to talk about I mentioned this a little while back, a Madden 18 wish list. I wrote it for Forbes already. It's basically 35 suggestions to make the game better, to take the game to the next level. I want to share that with you guys. I'm going to go over pretty much the article that I wrote, and I can give a little bit, maybe some more perspective that I maybe didn't offer when I wrote it, or maybe it's just going to be going over it with a different crowd, because I realize everybody who watches my YouTube videos don't necessarily read my articles, and vice versa. So we're going to go ahead and kind of cross-pollinate the you know, my content basis in that way. And I'm going to get to that. It's going to basically be a separate video. Probably is going to go up a little bit later tonight, or maybe first thing in the morning it'll go up, but I'll probably go ahead and record it tonight. So that is all that I have. It feels like this went really fast today. I don't know why, but it feels like it went really fast. I don't even know how long I've been on here. Hopefully we'll get some people jump on and check it out after the video has already gone up and posting is not live anymore. But like I said, I appreciate, and I always tell you guys, I appreciate you watching. God bless. Peace.